Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome viewers to another episode of Pathways to Prosperity. In our last episode, we started to unpack this amazing science of the psychology of money. How do we as human beings react to money? How do we engage with money? What is our relationship with money? And what we learned with our guest last week, who's joining us again this week, is that as human beings, we actually do not engage with money from a rational perspective, but it is our emotions that trigger our decision-making process for money. Mahir, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thanks for joining us again.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thank you for having me, Ameen.
Mahir, one of the things that I was reading about during the two episodes is divorce or money issues is actually a very high predictor of a divorce going to take place in a relationship. Speak to us about that, because we learned in the last one that sometimes within relationships, money then is the thing that exacerbates an issue or could be the root cause of an issue. So how is money such a big predictor of a divorce taking place?
Indeed, Ameen. International research in the couples, relational sphere has identified several important factors that serve as predictors. In other words, that are associated with couples who often go through a divorce successfully, let's say, in the end. And money was indeed one of them, along with communication, poor communication. Now, it's concerning because, as you are aware, in South Africa, we have a very high divorce rate.
Okay.
So, last time we spoke about how we relate to money emotionally and how there may be family traumas and traumas in our upbringing that shape our relationship with money and so forth. It's a very complex picture. But at the end of the day, where, a couple falls into distress, where money is a factor, another key variable that shows up is how they communicate, the quality of the communication. And if that is not good, it exacerbates the problem, which potentially puts them in a bit of a spiral.
Okay, so let's try and ask the question differently, and maybe I'm going to be a little bit controversial. People may not like the way I'm framing the question, but I'm going to ask it just as I'm thinking it, right? Because money is an emotional thing, or it's filtered through the emotional decision-making process. Is it fair for me to say that, is there research around this, that people who have healthy money habits or are wealthier are happier or have a naturally better emotional disposition than people who have bad money habits and have made bad financial decisions? Is there some correlation? People say money will make you happy, and some people say, no, money doesn't make you happy. Is there scientific correlation between happiness, because they link together, right? Because money is now an emotional thing. So does it play a part in your natural disposition as a human being?
I think the consensus on that very controversial subject is, no, there is no definitive link that money makes you happier. But I think the consensus is that, look, money helps.
Okay.
Money helps a lot of people with access to resources. It keeps people going. But no, ultimately, are the rich fundamentally happier than people in, low-income households? There isn't definitive research that, money is the definition of happiness at the end of the day. But it certainly helps.
So in relationships, what we hear about a lot of the times is that, we were talking about divorce. What are some of the key major issues that you've seen in the history of your practice where money was the problem? What does money trigger in relationship issues?
I think when money comes up, as a point of contention, people struggle with communication.
Right.
People struggle to talk to each other in a good and healthy way to resolve the problem or the concern where money is involved.
Okay.
So, just to give you an idea and a little bit of context, often what I see, and my colleagues could very well attest to this, is three elements in communication, not just about money, but especially about money, that shows up, that causes further problems for a couple. And the three things that I'm referring to, firstly in communication, is blame.
Okay.
So when there is a problem and emotions are involved and people are angry, or people are anxious or unhappy in some other way, there's often blame.
So if I'm going through a financially bad patch and I'm in a marriage, I blame my spouse and say, you're wasting too much money.
Something like that.
Okay.
And it certainly can go both ways.
Yeah.
With money. Either you're spending too much money, or you withholding money, for instance.
Okay.
Right? The second element to that is judgment. So
Right.
now that I've determined that you are to blame, I'm making a further judgment to say that you are the problem in some sort of way, because you don't have good money spending habits, and there are reasons for that.
Okay.
So now I've blamed you, and I've judged you.
Okay.
And the third thing that shows up is prescription.
Yeah.
I am now going to tell you how you should engage with money instead of how you engage with money. So I blame you, I judge you, and I prescribe to you. Now, the key here is not that it happens about money specifically. It's not because money is the subject. It's the elements in the communication process.
Right.
Because if I blame you and I judge you and I tell you what to do, I prescribe to you, there's a very good chance that you're going to stop listening to me.
Okay.
There's a very good chance that you are getting ready with a counter that you are going to give my way.
Defense mode kicks in.
And you're probably going to blame, judge, and prescribe to me.
Yeah.
So by the time that happens back and forth several times, you can now imagine what happens between those two people.
Yeah.
And that is the point where they may, seek additional help in the form of counseling.
So it's so interesting because from a banker perspective, right? I have always believed, and now my belief needs to change, that money is a logical thing. So for example, if I have 100 Rand, then I can only spend 100 Rand, and I need to prioritize paying rent, and I need to prioritize transport and insurance and food, etc. So in my head, it always was a logical thing. You have got a priority, or you've got a hierarchy, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and so you filter your monetary decisions through there. But interestingly enough, psychologically, it's actually not that. We emotionally attached to money. Could this be the reason why we hear so often in divorce proceedings and relationship issues that money starts to become the bargaining chip? Because a breakup is an emotional thing, and so because our relationship with money is emotional, it starts to become possibly the largest bargaining tool.
Absolutely. I mean, money, metaphorically, symbolically, anywhere in the world, represents power.
Yeah. Okay.
Money represents power. And so that is the commodity that people often go for.
Yeah.
Money can be used, we can use money to do great things in the world, but we can also use money to punish people.
Yeah.
We can use it as a reward and in a punishment system.
Yeah.
And in divorces that are often acrimonious, where there are disputes, that is often the main tool that people use to express their dissatisfaction or their unhappiness with the other person.
That's such a profound thing, that money actually metaphorically is linked to power, which again is an emotional thing. And because of me feeling powerful as a consequence of my money, I would seek to subjugate somebody through money or reward them. It's so profound. And I want to say thank you, Mahir, for bringing some of these elements out to us. So how do we, in the last episode, we spoke about what tools we can put in place in order for us to build healthier habits, right? And healthier spending habits. What would be your advice to us because obviously Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, linking it back to our belief system as Muslims, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, our belief is that it's not our money. It's Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's, and it's only an amana entrusted to us. Yes. How do we, and I don't know if there's a psychological trick here that we're missing, but how do we try and start rewiring our minds to get us to a point where we decouple this idea that money is power and actually start building that relationship with money that it's Allah's and it's an amana. So scientifically, what's the tools we can use to get us there?
So last time around, we spoke about self-awareness as the first port of call to get to know yourself and how you engage with money.
Yeah.
I think certainly along with that comes self-regulation.
Okay.
If I can use it in a shorthand, I mean, self-regulation just basically means bringing yourself into balance.
Okay.
Where you are doing too little of something or too much of something, the idea of moderation is good. So learn how to, in a healthy way, control yourself around, be it your spending habits, the way you think about money, the distorted core beliefs that you might have about money that's connected to your trauma. So that would be the second thing. But I would think that in a marriage context especially, what is also important is how you communicate. You know, make communication safe. Have safe conversations. Learn how to have safe conversations about money in your relationship. You know, bring in empathy, bring in compassion, bring in a healthy understanding of how you engage with money is based on a personal context and a journey of life that you come through. And that I, as your partner, would like to have a healthy understanding of where you're coming from. And it's not so easy. I mean, empathic communication takes guidance, it takes practice, and it's worth something investing in, because if you can talk and have safe conversations, you become a unit.
Yeah.
You know, they speak about a couple identity. Once you as a couple develop your joint identity and have safe conversations, you can start tackling difficult things in your life, of which money might be one of them.
I think a very important thing, we touched on it very briefly in a prior episode, is what are the rights of woman when it comes to money in a marriage? And if she contributes to the household, what should be the form? Is she entitled to claim it back, etc.? And maybe as a closing part of this, it's something that we see in society quite a lot, is hypothetically in a scenario where we know that the man is supposed to provide as the default position. And sometimes when you're unable to do this, maybe you lost your job, you got retrenched, there's no employment available. A lot of the times we actually feel inadequate as a man because we're unable now to have money. And I don't know from a psychological perspective how deep those scars go in making somebody feel inadequate in their ability to provide, and vice versa as well. When you do provide, you make the other person feel inadequate, that you only the provider and thing. So maybe from a psychological perspective, what are the guardrails that we can put in place to prevent us from getting those scars of inadequacy and also preventing us from making somebody else feel inadequate?
I think building off of good communication is also to open up the conversations about your background and money. So that it can carry a healthy understanding between people of how money may have been used as a symbol of power or a symbol of destruction or deprivation of all of the unhealthy or toxic things that we might call about money. So, you know, normalize these conversations, ask each other questions. You know, what are the money secrets? What are the, you know, for instance, what couples often do is that, you know, the one partner will lend money to their family without the knowledge of the other. And it becomes a dynamic, and, you know, it becomes a pattern that infiltrates their marriage and becomes a problem. So
or you hide money from your spouse.
You hide money from your spouse, for example. Exactly. These kinds of things. So normalize conversations about your background with money. Your family traditions around it and how you relate. You know, make it safe, and, you know, and when you do that, you make yourself vulnerable.
Mahir, Jazakallah khair so much for that. Viewers, I want to end with something. There's a verse of the Quran that's coming to mind, because in this show we covered that metaphorically what we have done with money as a society globally is that we've attached power, rank, stature to money. And the verse of the Quran that comes to mind is to try to get us to detach this symbolism between money, power, stature. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says so beautifully in the Quran, تُعِزُّ مَن تَشَى وَتُذِلُّ مَن تَشَى. That honor and stature is provided by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and He takes that away from us. So maybe as an encouragement for us, as a tool to try and detach this idea that money is power, is remember that power and stature and wealth all comes from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and all we can do is fulfill the amana that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has entrusted us with. Until next time, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.